Coffee by Died in War of Hormones. For the full experience, please read alongside listening to this. Links are in the description below. Summary. Soul words don't always turn out to be as romantic as you'd hoped. In which Jin is disappointed that the cute guy with dimples and pink hair isn't destined to be his. And if Namjoon wasn't so hungover, he wouldn't have fucked up so bad. So, can you cover my shift on Thursday? Jimin asked, turning away from the display case where he'd been rearranging the various cakes and brownies on offer, when he didn't receive an answer. Hyung! Huh? Geez, were you listening to any of that? He pouted, folding his arms over the pink apron and trying to look sufficiently insulted. Sorry, Jiminy. Jin frowned apologetically. Something about your contemporary dance course and practice? Honestly, Hyung, sometimes I wonder if you're on the same planet. Daydreaming about your soulmate again? Yeah, don't be cheeky, he scolded, reaching out to flatten down the younger's shirt collar to hide his embarrassment. Especially if you want something from me. Right, I need you to cover my shift on Thursday. We're being examined for the end of this module and I need to get in extra practice time before. Yeah, okay, fine, I get it, Jin interrupted. You better not be working yourself too hard again. Don't worry, Yoma, he rolled his eyes. It's not a major part of my final grade anyway. I'll bring you supper. He charitably decided to let the sarcasm slide. You always forget to eat. Thanks, Hyung. Jimin gave him a beaming smile, complete with crescent eyes, before ducking under the counter to go bother Jungkook again. For once, the ever-busy cafe on the edge of the campus was fairly quiet, but he was glad for the break. He spent most of Friday working there, taking both a morning and evening shift split around the sole tutorial of the day, and the job could get a bit repetitive. Currently, the shy freshman was the only customer. As usual, he had hidden himself away in a far corner with his sketchbooks and a mug of hot chocolate, drawing, with the look of almost pained concentration on his face, a frown etched into his forehead and his tongue between his teeth. Jin watched on fondly as Jimin practically threw himself at the boy, startling him into dropping his pencils as he shifted to adjust the elder's weight, which was now firmly leant on him. He was blushing furiously and trying to fight him off as he started to rearrange his hair. The only reason he'd even talked to him was because they'd been at the same high school back in Busan, his words edged with the faint lilt of Satori. Sighing, Jin returned his gaze to the door, waiting for new customers. As strongly as he would deny it to anyone who would ask, especially Jimin, he was sort of waiting for his soulmate. Of course, in a way, everyone was waiting for their soulmates until the day they found them. But there was a much higher probability of them walking in any moment for Jin. For his, and he was pretty sure it was his and not her, first words to him were destined to be the rather underwhelming. Double espresso with 2 extra shots, please. He knew it could be far, far worse, of course. Hosok had, go rest in fucking pieces, asshole, which was hardly a great place to start a relationship from. But he did still wish it could be something a little more romantic and a little less mundane. His soul words had in fact been the main reason behind his taking a job at a coffee shop during college. It was also conveniently placed, had shifts that perfectly suited his timetable, and paid rather well, but that was just an added bonus. Unfortunately, its location right next to the campus meant that there were a surprisingly high number of customers giving that exact order. He tried to always say something distinctive in reply, especially to the cute ones, as there was no real way of knowing for sure you were actually matched until your first kiss. He couldn't imagine anything worse than making such a mistake, though he'd like to think he would just know when he met them. Hey Gugia, are you going to see the play next week with Jimin? Jin asked as he set down a plate with a raspberry brownie on the table, carefully avoiding the delicate charcoal sketches that were littered over the surface. On the house. You never gave me this much free stuff before I started working here, Jimin complained, sighing dramatically. Yeah, I think so, Hyung, Jungkook replied. It's just an end-of-module thing, like my dance assessment. But it should really be good. Plus Tae will murder me if I don't come. He had given up on pouting, having realized it was having little effect. He's really excited to meet Jungkook too. Such a statement could only elicit concern. Tae-hyung was Jimin's eccentric and very easily excitable roommate, and could be, frankly, overwhelming when you first met him. Jin had worked with him on a few performances before and interacted with him very frequently, since they were majoring in the same subject. He certainly valued his energy when it came to acting, as he poured all of his passion into the role, although on the other hand, it could possibly be argued that he took it too far. He liked to really inhabit the soul of his characters to the extent that their neighbours complained a lot about late-night, high-volume recitals, especially that one time he had been playing a violent drunk and took to crashing about their apartment, yelling and swearing and breaking things. Since he was doing an excerpt from Shakespeare for this particular assessment, it was reasonable that Jungkook could expect quite a terrifying experience. He made a mental note to instruct Jimin later on the merits of keeping him under control. "This is amazing," Jin praised Jungkook as he examined one of his sketches in detail. It was the view of the old library, which was across the street from the cafe. The building was tall and imposing, with a facade intricately decorated with stone carvings, having once belonged to someone both rich and fond of British architecture, before it became publicly owned. "Thanks," he smiled shyly, looking at his feet to hide the blush that had spread across his cheeks at the compliment. "Can I pin it up?" he asked. "Or do you need it?" "No, that's fine," he shook his head. "It's just a rough sketch." "Well, it's really good. You have a lot of talent, Kukia." He carefully placed the drawing in the best position on the notice board that occupied one wall of the cafe. It mostly held adverts for student productions, both offers of and desperate pleas for mentoring services and motivational posters. During finals, they needed all the encouragement they could get. But Jin liked to beautify the collection with art. He stood back to admire his handiwork, which was almost thrown to the ground when the cafe door was swung open with enough force to make it rattle on its hinges and make Jin fear for the glass and a ball of energy burst in. "Hobby, hobby!" he screeched, doing some terrible aegyo and throwing his arms wide in a dramatic manner. "I am here!" "Ya, Hosok, how many times do I have to tell you not to come in here like that?" Jin scolded. "One of these days, you're going to break that door or seriously injure someone, and I'll probably be the one who has to clean up after you." "Ah, Hyung, you love me really?" he replied, completely unabashed, and flashed him with a smug grin. "Hyung, no, you're all sweaty," Jimin yelped, squirling in the man's grasp as he was enveloped in a hug. "I'm just so excited to see my favorite Tongsang." "False words. You told Cookie that he was your favorite just the other day. He told me about it." "Jungkook, you betray me!" "I know you were only doing it to convince him to join your dance society." "I am wounded you'd think so little of me." "Hyung, you only said it after I'd agreed to trying it out." "Ah, betrayed again. The pain is too much to bear." Jin could practically hear the exclamation marks at this point, and was exceedingly grateful that the cafe was so lacking in customers for them to scare away. Knowing that his only method of bribery, namely free sugary products, would get them to shut up would be counterproductive, as they would only get more hyper, he took cover behind the counter. It was at that moment that the door swung open yet again, and a very flustered and out-of-breath student rushed in, crashed into a table, dropped all his books, and somehow managed to knock over a chair as he had tried to gather them all up again. He was tall, but had the appearance of a puppy that hasn't yet grown into their limbs, which was probably a large contributing factor behind his clumsiness. Thick-rimmed, stylish glasses were perched precariously on his head, or had been before he had more or less fallen over his own feet, amongst messy hair that was a strange mix of pink and yellow that was oddly reminiscent of a cockatoo. "Double espresso with 2 shots, please," he gasped breathlessly before diving back onto the floor to retrieve his glasses, adding on a few moments later, "To go, for Kim Namjoon." Jin had been too shocked by his dramatic entrance to actually say anything in return, but his hands worked on automatic to prepare the familiar drink. Halfway through considering how attractive he found pink hair, the realization suddenly dawned on him that he had said, "The words! And he was cute!" "Death by espresso, huh?" he said as he pushed the drink across the counter and flashed the handsome customer his best flirtatious smile. Gotta make good first impressions, right? But he just grabbed the coffee, muttered a thanks, accompanied by an awkward laugh, and sprinted back out of the cafe. So much for that. "No luck, huh, Hyung?" Jimin asked with a smirk. "Shut up, you should be working instead of bothering Jungkook," Jin snapped. "But he's the only customer," he whined. "I don't care, go and polish tables or something." Jeez, okay, fine. And Hosok, are you going to order something or just sit there bringing up the decibel level by 10? Sorry, Hyung. A few minutes later, he was already feeling guilty for his moody behavior, but also uncharacteristically stubborn about apologizing. His comments were kind of warranted, after all. Was he ever going to find his soulmate? The world seemed to have it in for Kim Namjoon that morning. To start it off, he had slept straight through his multiple alarms. This was arguably his fault, as he stayed up far too late the night before, having a philosophical existential crisis over a few too many beers. But Yoongi could have woken him up when he left, for God's sake. Although that was probably revenge for the fact that he had rambled for several hours without stopping about what? The hangover was making it hard to remember right now, when he was supposed to be listening to his new track. Right, that was the second thing. The hangover. Again, totally his fault, because it was hardly a surprise that he had a lecture in the morning, and he should really know his tolerance by now. But in his defense, it was a Thursday, and he had just gotten a top grade on one of his papers, so really he felt entitled to a celebration. Although he did get top grades on most of his papers, but, semantics. But the point was that he was exhausted, had a headache, and had to go concentrate for a solid 2 hours in a maths lecture that he was extremely late to. He had then broken the coffee machine in his attempts to attain some much-needed caffeine, and his luck was such that it broke before he got the coffee. What's more, Yoongi would quite possibly flay him alive when he found out, but that was a thorny encounter that would have to be dealt with later. As previously mentioned, he was late. So he had to run out of the apartment they shared a minute off campus, internally bemoaning the day he had decided to try and major in both philosophy and maths at the same time, when one would have sufficed, leading to these endless morning lectures. Having almost gotten run over by several cars, he had now somehow ended up on a different route to the one he usually took, and thus not going past his preferred coffee shop. The rational part of him knew this was not the end of the world. The part of him that was prone to 2 a.m. existential crisis about Kant versus Nietzsche on morality decided that he might as well give up now and go live as a hermit. But coffee was coffee, so he rushed to the closest cafe he could find, and promptly crashed into a table, dropped all his books, knocked over a chair, and lost his glasses. Great. "Double espresso with 2 extra shots, please," he gasped, and dropped to the floor to try and find aforementioned glasses, as there really wasn't much point going to the lecture without them, especially as he'd end up at the back with how late he was going to be. He was also trying to hide from the barista, having realized that he had permanently lost all pretense of dignity and could never return to the shop again without relieving the embarrassment. To go for Kim Namjoon," he hurriedly added, before yet another thing could go wrong. When he eventually gathered up all his belongings, his drink was ready, which was good, as a quick glance at his watch told him that he was even later than he had thought. "Death by espresso, huh?" The barista, and damn, he was cute. No, focus, Namjoon, you have to go," laughed. He grabbed the cup, laughed nervously because really it should be illegal how attractive this guy was, muttered thanks and sprinted out. Half an hour later he was, as expected, right at the back of the lecture hall, having somehow managed to sneak in with minimal noise and 0 accidents, aka a miracle. Trying and failing to focus on the various methods for finding many-dimensioned inverse matrices. It wasn't that the topic failed to grasp his interest. Matrices were really fascinating and had some exciting real-life applications. But that he had an encounter with an extremely gorgeous barista, and he was suffering, okay? Thoughts of soft brown hair and broad shoulders, dear Lord, those shoulders, were crowding out any attempts at absorbing information. He sighed exaggerately, earning him a disapproving look from the student beside him. He really should be focusing on the maths. After all, it wasn't as if the guy was his soulmate or anything. Oh, shit. He frantically pulled up his sleeve to look at the words tattooed on the inside of his wrist. Death by espresso, huh? Cute barista guy was his soulmate. Or could be. He probably said that to all the caffeine-deprived students who came in to order excessive quantities of espresso. Even so, if he was then, he had seriously fucked up. Just another thing to add to the long list of things going wrong that day. He considered running out of the lecture hall right there and then, and getting back to the cafe as fast as humanly possible, which for him admittedly wasn't very fast, as his limbs tended to get in the way of coherent movement. But he had 3 more lectures and a tutorial after this. Again? Why did he do this to himself? Why? And he was supposed to be meeting Yoongi in the music department, which was in completely the opposite direction of the cafe, later on to work on some tracks for the upcoming rap battle they were going to. Because hobbies are important, and clearly he didn't need free time or sleep like normal people. He couldn't risk annoying Yoongi either, aka the devil incarnate whose anger could come with a hazard warning, or his professors who had zero sympathy for the fact that he had inflicted 2 majors on himself. Tough luck, hand in the assignment when it's due, Kim. So, in short, his soulmate was going to have to wait. He could only hope he was a patient sort. It was already dark by the time Jin had finished his second shift. There was an autumnal chill in the air, and it was drizzling lightly. Nowhere near heavy enough to warrant an umbrella, but sufficient to mess up his hair and fog up his glasses. It hadn't been such a bad day in reality. The troublesome duo of Hosok and Jimin had cleared off to go to a dance class, and he had been joined at the till by Moonbyul Yi after his one class which had gone smoothly. They minored in culinary arts together, and more importantly, she could hold conversations at normal sound levels and didn't make fun of him. Well, not too often anyway. He'd had a short period of peace before the hurricane that was Taehyung had blown in, ordered a matcha green tea frappuccino with caramel shots and extra sprinkles. What happened to this kid's taste buds anyway? Dramatically performed his rendition of Hamlet's to be, or not to be speech, to a shell-shocked couple and whirled out again. Now it was the end of the day and his shoulders were stiff from leaning over a coffee machine for too long, and he just wanted to go home and eat cake in front of a crappy drama for as long as he was free of his roommate's excessive screeching. Remind him again why he decided sharing an apartment with Hosok wouldn't damage his eardrums? So maybe he was feeling sorry for himself. Maybe it was an overreaction, because the day really hadn't been too terrible. No worse than usual, anyway. But his failed attempt at finding his soulmate had left him feeling unusually gloomy. He had just been so sure. Maybe it was just the pink hair, or the absurdly cute dimples when he smiled. Okay, stop now, Jin. You're probably never going to see him again. On the bright side, at least he didn't have a soulmate who was liable to break anything as soon as he'd touch it. He was jolted out of his thoughts by the sound of heavy footsteps, and for a few terrifying moments he thought he was about to get mugged. Gripping his door keys between his fingers, he turned to meet his would-be assailant, only to come face to face with the very same guy he had just been mooning over. "Hey, wait up!" he panted as he came to an ungainly halt in front of him. "Oh, hi. Kim Namjoon, wasn't it?" he said casually, as if he hadn't spent his entire day thinking about him. "Nope, definitely not." "Oh yeah," he nodded, seemingly surprised that he had remembered his name. "Can I help you with anything?" Jin finally asked after it was clear that no more words were forthcoming. "Oh, right, yeah, okay, so, look, this morning I was really late to my lecture and a bit hungover. A lot, if I'm being honest. I mean, well, that's not what I'm trying to say. All I want to say was that, he started to ramble, shuffling awkwardly from foot to foot whilst a deep red blush spread across his cheek to the tips of his ears. "I'm sorry, I don't really..." "Did you leave something at the cafe? It's still open, you know," he replied, utterly confused as to what was happening. "No!" Namjoon almost shouted, waving his hands furiously. No, that's not what I... Okay, just look." And he rolled up his sleeve to show him the words printed along the inside of his wrist. "Huh?" was all Jin could manage to say as he stared at the words. He had just 5 minutes ago been daydreaming it might actually be there. "So," he prompted, drawing out the vowel carefully. "Ah, shit, this is embarrassing. Okay, sorry, clearly I've made a mistake. I'm gonna go now, sorry for wasting your time." And he made to turn. "Wait!" Jin grabbed his wrist before he could disappear out of his life for the second time, pulled him back, and rolled up his own sleeve to display his soul words. "It's not a mistake." "Oh," he broke into a shy smile after reading the words. "Cool, I guess we're soulmates?" "Yeah, I guess. So, what's your name?" "Kim Sok-jin, but call me Jin. 4th-year student majoring in drama, minoring in the culinary arts, and in possession of my own apartment." He grinned. "Oh, thank God you can cook," Namjoon blurted out. "I'm not destined to a lifetime of pot noodles and days-old takeout." Jin could only laugh at this. "You have no idea how good I am. I could be failing for all you know." "You'd still be better than me," he joined in with the laughter. The whole situation was becoming quite surreal. I'm a third-year student majoring in maths and philosophy, by the way, and have an apartment, but I share it with this scary gremlin. At the same time, he was rather bemused by the scary gremlin, but his brain had failed to move in past the fact that his soulmate was apparently majoring in 2 things at once. Yeah, I frequently want to die, he laughed, rubbing the back of his neck with his free hand in embarrassment. You'll need me to cook for you, then? I don't think I've ever been more grateful for the existence of soulmates, Hyung. It was at this point Jin realized he was still holding on to the other's wrist, and rather tightly at that, as if he was afraid he might vanish if he ever let go. He considered releasing him, but instead slid his hand down to link their fingers, causing Namjoon to blush even harder. Hey, hang on a minute, he suddenly said, eyebrows narrowing as he realized that his soulmate had taken an entire day to figure it out. What the hell took you so long? I'm so sorry. I was in such a rush and hungover. As I've already mentioned, probably too much. I swear I don't usually get drunk on a Thursday night, and I got really distracted. I only realized in the middle of my lecture, and I'm a double major because I'm a masochistic idiot. So I had 3 more lectures, and then I had to meet my friend Yoongi. He's the scary gremlin, by the way, that would have killed me if I didn't turn up. Then I lost track of time, and yeah, sorry. He managed to get out his entire speech in the time it would normally take to say 1 sentence, and as such, Jin was struggling to compute it all at once. Distracted by what? Was that his mouth decided was the most relevant piece of information? Your face? Was Namjoon's incredibly embarrassed reply. What? It's attractive, you're attractive, is what I meant to say. Eloquent, Jin said, eyebrow raised, though he really wasn't annoyed anymore. Well, he was a little, but this was his soulmate, so he really shouldn't hold a grudge for too long. Well, your face hasn't exactly become anything less beautiful since this morning, so you can't blame me. Flattery will get you anywhere. They stood in the light of the street lamp, made hazy by the constant drizzle that was beginning to build up to actual rain, smiling at each other in silence for a few minutes. There was nothing awkward about it, just 2 people taking in the features of the one they were destined to be with. Can I kiss you? Namjoon asked hesitantly, and when Jin did not reply immediately, shocked by the question, he began to ramble again. Sorry, we don't have to. I was just thinking it would be nice. You know, I don't doubt I'm making this awkward, aren't I? I'm sorry, I'll just shut up. Jin cut him off by leaning in and pressing their lips together, one hand fisting in his shirt to pull him down enough to even out the slight height difference, and the other moving to the back of his neck. Namjoon wrapped both arms around his shoulders to pull him in even closer, one hand sliding down to the small of his back. There were no fireworks, or confetti, or dramatic romantic music playing in the background. Perhaps a violin quartet accompanied by a good tenor. None of that. Instead was the soft glow of the flickering street lamp, the slightly uncomfortable dampness of fine rain, and the incessant dinging of Namjoon's phone alerting him to several texts from Yoongi demanding to know where the hell he was. It was fucking perfect. Guess we're definitely soulmates then, Jin smiled when they finally broke apart, arms now lacing a crown around Namjoon's neck. I think maybe we should check again, just to be sure, he grinned back. Smooth. It was a good day after all. Thank you very much for listening and getting this far. Please leave any comments about what I could do to improve. I know the audio sounds a bit blah at times, but I do try my best. So yeah, subscribe if you want more of these, or I don't know, if you have any stories that you'd like me to narrate, please let me know. Narcissist.